Probably sloths were the last thing you were expecting to see in a presentation about APIs and voice assistants. But the truth is that I was that kind of kid that watched a lot of nature documentaries when I was young. And I even fought with my uncle over the control on TV. He wanted to watch a film after lunch and then have a nap. And once he got asleep, I will go sneak into the TV. I will change it back to the channel of my favorite whales. And then he will wake up again, asking me to change the TV back. And that was not just as a kid, but now I'm still a kind of freak about animals. And one of the books that I've read was about curious facts about animals. And as you would expect, the chapter that was more interesting for me was the one about sloths. And probably in your mind, spoiler alert, probably in your mind what you have, or the idea that you have about these amazing creatures, is that they are lazy. I mean, it's part of the name, sloth. And the reality is not that they are just want to hang out in the trees and just stay there for a long time. And even if it's true that they are really slow animals and they move really, really slow, the truth is that they are not lazy. They are efficiency champion. They just move when they need to. And the reason for that is that they feed mostly on leaves. And, well, they are toxic leaves, and in order to process them, they rely on their digestive system. It's quite complex, and they take them up to 50 days in order to process their leaves. So with this low calorie intake that they have, they must be as efficient as possible and just move when they need to. So, and what we have to learn from them? Well, we live in a really complex society, and now the technology world is evolving faster and faster, and your users, or even us, we do have many devices, and we have to interact with many apps with your company. And before that, or years ago, you have to take care about a website. Then probably you needed to implement a mobile app, or something for smart devices, as watches, or even sensor at your home. And what all these different applications have in common is that the data and the services that your customers use are the same. So you better try to reuse as much as possible, so you focus on what it adds value for your company. And today we are going to use as example Revo. It's a fictional car manufacturer, but think on your industry, your project, your company, how everything that we were going to show today might apply to you. So they have a really large net of different distributors to reach the end user. And Revo has to provide different services to all the different departments. So being that the sales department with sales material, or the customer services to attend the customers, or even for the repair shop in order to manage all the spare parts. And Revo has to face a lot of different problems or challenges. And here today we are going to focus on this one. Their customers, or even ourselves, we more and more demand engaging experiences and that are enjoyable, and we are comfortable using a website or a mobile app. Then also Revo needs to keep a unified branding. So the content shown across all the different channels is the same, so the customers have the same experience no matter if they are visiting a shop in Mainz here, or in London, or in Madrid. And as the IT budgets are shrinking, and they are trying to be as efficient as possible, they cannot afford to spend their time updating the content or updating the experiences. So they need that this content and experiences are maintained by business users. So in this scenario, Emily, she's the manager of the marketing department, wants to innovate some of these channels that I've shown. And the first idea that she has is to improve the experience that the customers have when they are in a shop checking for more information. So she thinks that installing these digital screens or totems could increase the sales. So while they are waiting, customers can check the information about the different cars, customize it, check what's the how much it's going to cost their car. So she gathers with the IT department, thinks on the requirements, and OK, so they agree, and they build a custom app with all the information that they need, and they deploy it on their car dealerships. And after several months, they see that the sales are increased and that everything goes well. So they are quite happy. But Emily goes with her family on a holiday, and they visit an NFL stadium. And in one of those, they see this totem where you can create a really customized experience with your favorite football players. Then you can take a nice photo with them, fake it, and then take that awesome memory home and brag with your friends or family. And Emily knows that she cannot replicate exactly the same experience to their use case. But she takes note of some ideas of how they can improve their totems back. So again, she's back. She gathers again with the IT department, and she starts to explain how she sees they can improve the totems. So the first idea that she has is, well, the content shouldn't be static, so maybe they want to launch a new promotion in September for back to school, or they need to prepare the totems for the launch of the new car. So they need to change this content easily without having to deploy on the different hundreds or thousands of the different shops. The second idea that she has is that the customers going to a car shop are not looking the same. So it might be a young person looking for a small and urban car, or a family looking for a big car to stuff together all the things that the baby will need. So they need to offer different promotions to the different profiles. And the last thing that she wants to is for them to these totems to be not unconnected or disconnected for the rest of the experiences. So the users, once they are back home, they can check the same promotions on their mobile app, or the agent can send through an email a link to check the same information. So the IT department has all these requirements and say, oof, maybe the app that we built is not enough and we need more complex things. So how Liferay can help this team to achieve all those three requirements. So for changing easily the content, they can rely on all the tools for creating content that we've built. So relying on the structures and all the web content. And then with the APIs, they can pull this content and show it on the totems. For the personalization, they can use the content sets that are dynamic. So set a different criteria for young people, for families, and then thanks to the segmentation features, to be able to target the list of cars to the different segments. And then for publishing the same offer in all the channels, they can again reuse this content set, so it's maybe in the site shown in an asset publisher or through the API showing the totem. And the second experience that Emily wants to improve is for the customer service. So once the clients have bought a car and they have to do the regular check from their living room, interacting with Alexa, for example, in this case, they can order or book an appointment and check the different courtesy cars that are available. So it's more convenient for them. They don't have to take care of the opening hours of the shops and do it on the weekends or at night or in the morning. And she thinks that through this experience, they can innovate more on this channel. OK. Thanks, Pablo. So it's in these complex situations where it's more important to adapt and prosper. And one example is the sloths. The sloths, in this image, this sloth doesn't survive running away from predators or fighting back. One strategy they follow is just standing still, like Jurassic Park. So in this image, we can see one of those strategies in action. So this sloth is not green because she's a punk star or whatever. She's green because she's a living ecosystem. So she cooperates with insects and plants that let her to simulate that she's part of the tree. So other predators aren't able to find her.
And as the sloths, Liferay has several strategies to deal with these kind of situations of exposing complex content. So, as Jorge mentioned in his talk, we have several different approaches. It's possible that the existing tools, the existing content creation tools of Liferay are enough, and a traditional approach where you just use the content creation tools and use templates or DSPs to expose the content it's a perfect valid strategy for your use case. Or it could be the case that you have a very strong front-end team, or you want to parallelize work between different teams, and a headless approach, a pure headless approach, where you just access the APIs from all your channels could be the right fit for your use case. Or a mixed approach, where some contents, some channels, like mobile, for example, use the APIs, and other channels use a mixed approach of APIs or templates. To support these three strategies, Liferay offers three different solutions. One you already know, that is the Liferay JSON web services, the existing web services. A new one, introduced in 7.2, but it's also available in 7.1, is the Headless APIs. The Headless APIs are a pure REST implementation that exposes typically JSON content following the REST specification, so the HTTP verbs, the REST specification as it's defined. And the other one is GraphQL. GraphQL is a query language invented by Facebook that gives some power back to developers. So front-end developers can query for just the specific fields they want to retrieve. Okay, the approach Liferay follows with the headless REST APIs, it's an API-first approach. So we follow OpenAPI. Many of you will already know OpenAPI as Swagger. It's the tool previously known as Swagger. And OpenAPI is an industry-wide standard. It's adopted by the main players in the industry, by Google, Microsoft, IBM, all the big companies. And it's a standard that is pretty well known for developers. So in Liferay's approach, we write our OpenAPI profile, and with a tool that's called REST Builder, we generate the APIs. And those APIs try to cover three goals. The first one, that it's really easy to adopt because it's using OpenAPI, that's already known for a lot of API developers. The second one is that it helps you with all the scaffolding stuff, so pagination, sorting, searching, all those things that you have to repeat a lot in your API projects. That's already dealt by REST Builder. And the third one is consistency. So if you are using this tool, all your APIs will be more or less the same, and new developers using the APIs won't have to learn new patterns. So in this slide, I have an announcement to make that Liferay is now a partner of OpenAPI, and is trying to follow. Yeah, thanks. It's trying to follow this and contribute to the specification. So we will try to help other developers being one part of OpenAPI. And the other approach is GraphQL. GraphQL is a very different approach from the REST APIs, because one big difference is that we are exposing just one unique endpoint. So just from a unique URL, or GraphQL, you are able to access all the APIs, all the existing APIs of Liferay, and you can use that power to retrieve a lot of entities in just one request. Where in a headless API world, you will have to do a lot of HTTP requests to get several contents. Here in GraphQL, you can just do a simple query or a very complex query and retrieve all that content in just one request, helping save on bandwidth costs and CPU costs, and helping developers to create the query just for the specific use case. And we have the same capabilities as the REST APIs. So pagination, filtering, sorting, searching, all of those come for free. And with a very big advantage, that everything comes from the same OpenAPI specification. You don't have to write the backend logic, the API logic twice. You just write it once, and you have both approaches, REST APIs and GraphQL endpoint. OK, so I'm going to do a quick demo, because you don't want to see Olaf angry. So we have built this Revo site. I want to log in. And it's listing, it's a car manufacturer, and they manufacture several car models, and we have modeled them as web contents. So there is a web content with a DDM structure that is showing the list of the different cars and their parts. So the first use case that Pablo wanted to cover is to build a totem, a digital display that shows the information of the cars that will be present in those locations. So we have built a very simple Vue.js application that's using the GraphQL APIs. So this is a Vue.js application. It could be any kind of frontend that you want, an Angular or React application. And it's listing the information of the cars. Those are retrieved by a GraphQL query, and we can interact with the several different parts of the cars and show the information. So this is doing just one query, a query to a content set that has the list of cars. And because the content sets are dynamic and has segmentation built in, we couldn't lose the opportunity to use some of those segmentation capabilities. So I built a small face recognition algorithm that it should work with this slide. Yeah, it was, I'm not so young, but it's OK. I hope I will be 17, but I think that the light confused it. So this is a face recognition that it's segmentating me, and it's using the content set dynamic capabilities to query the content set, and it's segmentating me to a Young segment. And it showed me a list of cars that are more appropriate to my purchasing power. So this is backed by a content set. This is a dynamic content set that has a list of cars, of default cars, and has a Young segment that is just showing the cars tagged by this specific tag, by the tag chip. We could change, just look for a specific car, for example, this one, and tag it, and it will show in my Vue.js application. OK. So this is the card I have added. Very appropriate, being that I'm 17. So how is this done? It's pretty simple. It's just a Vue.js standard application that is listing the different things with the CSS, JavaScript. But the big power is this. This is an Apollo query. This is using Apollo. Apollo is a standard GraphQL client that is pretty well known by GraphQL developers. And we are using it to do a very complex GraphQL query. So here, we are doing two different things. One is retrieving, using relationships, the power of relationships, to return a list of content set elements, the members of a content set. And in this content set elements, for each content set, we are retrieving the information of a web content, of a structured content, all the related contents, and their images, all the information with just one request. And it's using also a pretty advanced feature of GraphQL that is called fragments. Specifically, the case of fragments, when something is generic, something implements an interface. In the case of a content set, the content set can return any type of asset. So it can return blog-centric, wiki articles, web contents. So in this case, we are telling GraphQL, OK, when you find an structured content, just in this use case, when that element implements that interface, I want to return the name, value, geoposition, image, etc. So it's using the generic capabilities of GraphQL. And I couldn't talk about GraphQL without talking about the documentation capabilities and the ability of seeing the endpoint with a viewer. So here I'm showing alter, that is just one common GraphQL viewer that is listing our endpoint, our own GraphQL. And here we can see all our paths, all our endpoints available. And we can see the live documentation with all the fields. And we can see the power of relationships. So here, for example, it's a blog posting that is also linked with their comments or with the categories or all the information that is available from just one request. And here, I'm using a complex query to retrieve all the threads, message board threads of a site, in this case, demo 1. And I'm returning the messages that were posted in every one of those threads, and the messages and the comments of those messages in just one request. So this is the power of relationships in a GraphQL query. This is an example. This is a use case where GraphQL fits very well the use case. So I have a complex front-end application where I want to minimize the number of HTTP requests, and I just want to do one HTTP request to retrieve all the information and give all the power back to front-end developers. So this is the use case of the totem, and I wanted to show quickly another use case. That's the Alexa, the voice recognition using the REST APIs. So I built here a very small, simple voice recognition algorithm. Let's hope that there's not a lot of noise. So Alexa, service center.
Here's what I found on Wikipedia. An automobile repair shop is...
Let's try it again because...
technicians.
Alexa, service center.
I don't know how to set research center to that setting.
Sorry, a real demo. Let's try to write it up.
Welcome to Ride Cars. You can ask me for available cars for rental or to buy or set up an appointment. What do you want to do?
Set up an appointment.
Oh, I hope your car is okay. 7 o'clock is fine?
Yes.
Okay, I've created an appointment. Do you want a courtesy car?
Yes, please.
You can rent one of the following cars, right?
So what this is doing behind, it's creating a web content that is backed by a custom DDM structured content, in this case an appointment, and we are filling different fields on each interaction of the Alexa voice assistant. So for example, I could say more info about the target. That was one of the specific cars.
Make it an expression of
and
yourself.
this is
with 10 exterior color options, all yours from the inside.
This information is retrieved by the Headless APIs. I could, for example, rent the target. Okay.
Rent this car.
Yes, please.
Okay. I've added the request to the appointment. See you there.
So what this have done is create an appointment. Here you can see the appointment created 5 seconds ago, and we have filled this information. Come on. Okay, sorry, it was. From the interaction of the Alexa voice assistant. So how are we doing this? It's pretty simple. We are just doing HTTP queries with the Headless APIs. In this case, for listing the available cars, we are just doing a GET request to a specific content set. And we are using an advanced feature of the REST APIs, that is the keyword fields. So instead of returning all the information of the web content, we are just returning one field, specifically the title inside of the content. So this is just listing the titles of the cars that are available. And for creating the content, we are just doing a post request with the content in a JSON format from our Alexa application, and that's all. It's pretty simple. And I couldn't talk about REST APIs without mentioning the OpenAPI profile. So everything, all of these APIs were generated based on an OpenAPI profile. This is the very standard OpenAPI viewer of Swagger Hub, the company behind OpenAPI. And here we can see all of our endpoints for this specific API, and we can navigate through the documentation of them or through the documentation of every entity and see the relationships, or even try our API if we set up the server block. And I wanted to finish with some small examples of some advanced features the Headless APIs have. So the typical one would be just showing the OpenAPI profile that I already shown. And a very simple request would be just querying the list of structured contents. Here, it's a list of all of our structured contents, including all our data, all related contents, all the rendered elements. But we also have multi-language capabilities. So here I'm returning a specific structured content in English, but I could also query it with a third language, that is the standard header for Spanish, for example. And this would return all the information, the related contents, the DDM structure, all the information that is available in Spanish. So here it's the information in Spanish. I could also query for another type of content, like in this case, the information in XML. Or I could use the fields that I showed you earlier to just limit the information to just the fields I want to render. In this case, title, ID, and date. I can combine the power of fields with filter, search, and sort. So here I'm returning just the title of the cars and everything that is stored in a structured content, in a web content. But I could restrict it with search. And search, what it does, it finds in all the fields of the content. So it's going to try to search in all the fields of our content. Here it's my new appointment that I book a rebook card. But I could restrict it even further with the filter keyword. The filter keyword, what it let us do is, I could say, I want to find something with a specific DDM structure, and that the title, not only all the fields, just the title, contains the Ribo card. And here are all the cards that starts with Ribo, contains Ribo. Or I could sort it by several fields. And the last use case I wanted to show you is flatten. It could be the case that you have a document media library, for example, where you have a list of images, and you have several folders inside with even more images. In a typical REST API, you could query this folder, and you could return just the images inside the root folder. But if you want to return everything, ignoring hierarchical content, we offered you a specific keyword that is called flatten, that ignores that hierarchy. And this is available for all hierarchical content, like structured content, wiki articles, even organizations. OK, so this is the power of the headless APIs. This is a use case where a headless API, a REST API, shines, because in an interaction with Alexa, I don't want to retrieve a lot of content. I just want to return. I just want to do several HTTP calls in every step. So this is a very good use case for this situation. So I'm going to leave with Pablo. He's going to finish.
OK, thank you, Javi. So what we've shown is just 2 examples of all the different use cases that you can build using the APIs. So think again about your industry or project and how you can apply what we've just shown. And we wanted to give you a sneak peek of what it comes in the future. So for those of you that need to build applications consuming the APIs, we will expose the actions that are allowed on a given resource. So for example, if you want to, whether to show a button to create or update an element, you can do that without having to do the query and then retrieve an error. Also, we know that it's important for you to manage the different versions of the content. So for example, being able to access content that it's still on draft status in order to build, for example, a preview. And for the use case of data integration, we will add support for batch operations. So in one single request, you will be able to import or export multiple elements. And for those of you that need to build APIs, we will provide you with the REST builder that we are using for our own APIs. So you can build your own custom APIs and use all the features about pagination, filtering, sorting, and having out-of-the-box both REST and GraphQL. And as we know that from some use cases, the APIs that we provide are not exactly what you're looking for, we will work on allowing the extensibility of this API, so you can add attributes that are not there, remove them, changing the behavior, or even adding actions to structured content or documents, for example. So we hope that with the help of these APIs, you will be able to be as efficient as possible, and that Liferay can help you even fly. We will have a workshop in the afternoon where you can see how to create an API and use them. And we will be here for any question. And thank you very much.